on Ellen, but it's after 7 a.m. maybe, 8 a.m. Well, good morning to Arkansas. Actually, good morning to everybody in the US of A and Canada and Mexico. Okay. But it's an interesting question from Ellen in terms of, well, with elephants, but referring mostly to what we were watching the other day. We witnessed a really interesting interaction with elephants, a little bit of sparring, a little bit of pushing and shoving. And Ellen's question is this kind of behavior encouraged by the matriarch? Is it something that youngsters do? There were other aspects to the question, but the general question is about the sparring of elephants and how it's triggered, I suppose. But essentially, it's just something that one doesn't really see the females doing it much. I suppose when females are doing it, there's a completely different reason for it. But when the males do it, it's something that they do from a young age. I wouldn't be able to say that it's the matriarchs that encourage it. That would be a little bit presumptuous, because after all, I don't really know what the matriarchs are thinking or doing. But it is a sort of a natural behavioral necessity, for want of a better phrase, in that young elephants need to learn the techniques. It's not only the techniques, but young elephants need to practice. It's like a gladiator school. It's like youngsters learning to wrestle, young humans, to the point of getting to be proficient at a particular type of wrestling. For elephants, it's the way they push and shove with their tuck into the top of their nose, tuck their trunks, using sometimes their tusks, their bodies. But what it does is, from a very early age, peers tend to sort out their differences at a very young age, because they know each other's status amongst the community of males within a given area. And that when it comes to adulthood, and maybe it is necessary to vie for dominance, maybe it's necessary to compete for dominance. Having sparred from a very young age, these elephants know their status, they know their position, and their and they know automatically when they're facing up to another bull, they know where his status is, they know who he is, they know who, or rather where he stands within the local community of bulls, because they've been sparring since a very young age. That's why you even get youngsters practicing against older bulls, and it's necessary. It's something that eventually rules out outright aggression amongst males when they're eventually getting to the point where they are competing for the attentions of a matriarch, and if they are of equal strength, neither one is going to acquiesce, neither one is going to give in, and so what happens is you get a pretty hard and violent fight going on. But nature isn't really productive if that was to happen, where males were to... Hello, Nyala. Nyala bull. Bit of a horn rope. Hello, you. Okay, Becky, this is quite a crossing, so you've got to hold on or brace yourself. I want to try and do it slowly because I want to see both. Oops. 20 past 8 in Auckland. 20 past 3, 20 past 8. 7 hours, not 8 hours difference. Thanks, Ellen. See the hyenas crossed here. 2 hyenas that came across. Oh, Becky! I don't know if you can get it. I don't know if I can go back. There's a baby monitor in here. And he's still sitting on a log. Oh, it's off. The new little monitor, there's a tiny little Nile monitor. It's all of about this long. I'm going to try and encourage it. Oh, no. I guess it was a little bit too close to the vehicle to get, yeah? Okay, I just need to get rid of some spider web on the camera. I'll get it. I can't hear these elephants at all. Oh, no. Baby Nile monitor, about that big. I must tell you a story about the day that I had a baby monitor and a baby crocodile, and they were the same size in my hand. One in one hand and one in the other. We just crossed the Thornybush River, and about, I'd say maybe 100 to 150 yards upstream is where these elephants seem to be coming into the river. I can't see anything from here because this lodge is in the way, and we're going to have to try and get that side. And hopefully maybe some of them have crossed the river on this side of the river. Yeah, no, it's fine now that it's done that too. Okay, this tree always gets us when we come across the river. Always, always. We need longer arms. Fixing the antenna. I just want to get back to the whole sparring thing. And in the animal kingdom, play is vital. Play is what prepares youngsters for adulthood. And that's one of the reasons why you find young animals playing at the I wouldn't say games, but the activity, the behavior, the playing at the things that they're going to do when they're adults. And in the days before television and mix it, and sun-operated electronic devices and computers and televisions. I can remember those days because I was a kid in those days. We kind of played the games that we would be when we were adults. I mean, we played with Matchbox cars, those boys. I did anyway. And we played adults, basically. That's what it was. All sorts of games that we played were the games of what we saw adults doing, we wanted to do as kids, and those became our games. And actually, that was vital to our upbringing, much the same as it is in the animal kingdom, where you have lion cubs tackling each other and rolling each other over and going for the throat and pretending to do the death bite or tripping each other up. And all the games that young animals play are those games that are vital when they're adults, to be able to compete with the... Oh, two of them. Purple-crested lories. They're too low down. No, they're here. They're eating the guarri inside fruit, inside that full guarri. The dark green leaves on the left. One's just flown away. There's still one in there. But I'm going to listen for elephants anyway. Yeah, there's still two there. There must have been four. Because there's still two in that guarri. Oh, there, it's in the open. It was in the open to fly away. Okay. We're getting closer. One of these days we're going to catch one of them on camera and I'm going to surprise you all. Not today. Today's not that day. I just heard this chorus of Taraka calls. Got excited. Essentially, that's what the elephants are doing. They're just playing at what they will be when they're adults. But it's an important process because it builds up a hierarchy amongst the boys, so that when they are adults, they are invariably going to come across each other, whether they're in a place like Thornybush or whether they're in a much larger environment like Kruger National Park. They're still going to meet up with each other, and they're still going to have to maybe compete for the attentions of a matriarch when they want to mate, or they want to have access to females that are in estrus, and those times are the times when they're going to remember all of the sparring when they were young, and they're going to sort of meet up with maybe a playmate from childhood, and they're going to know that they can dominate him or not. So let's see where these elephants have gone. There's one of them. This is the tuskless old lady. This is where they're coming out from the river. That's great. We sort of timed it nicely. There's probably some of them that have already crossed this road, judging by some of the tracks that I have. I want to go west of them so we can turn around and face back. There's some more in here. We're facing west. So what we want to do is we want to go forward a little bit, and then we want to turn around so we've got the sun behind us, and at the same time drive past the herd to get a better idea of how well spread out they are. And hopefully while we're sitting here they're going to come up to the vehicle or come past the vehicle and come and see us. Hello Franklin. The elephants are coming. I said they care. This is one of them. There's another Ellie there with it. Butt sticking out of a bush. Don't know. No, Caddy won't be with us. Caddy's finished school by now in Germany. Hiker. And maybe, let's see, maybe down in Australia, we can go down into this dry riverbed, and this will be about as far as I want to go away from it. So there's still tracks in the road here. There might still be some of these. It's quite a big herd. I think there are about 17 or 18 in this herd. There might still be some of them down here in this riverbed. Directly opposite the river lodge of Ilkley on Thornybush, or at Thornybush, and lots of ellie tracks here too. And they're directly opposite the lodge. Of course, there aren't any humans in the lodge right now. We're looking at one of the rooms up ahead of us. Is that like a double room, Becky?
Yeah.
One room here and one room there?
Yeah.
And then another cottage. Beautiful decks overlooking the river. Must be magic to stay there. Okay, well now we got the sun behind us. We're going to get a bit of view of these ellies as they're moving up from the river. They've probably been feeding in the river on the reeds and grasses, the green, lush green vegetation, mostly grazing for most of the morning. And now it's time for them to come out of the river. The riverbed's going to be a lot colder than the higher ground during the night. We've got a lot of cold air coming up from the Cape, where there's been a huge cold front moving through. Looks like some ellies might have already gone north from here. And so they're going to need their fiber, their bark and branches, and heavier foliage after feeding on grasses and things most of the morning. We found their tracks this morning crossing the river, and I thought, well, we would go and look for them. But it ended up that we were about to have a potential mechanical meltdown. So we had to sign off early. Here comes Flo, I think. Very, very wet. Elephant that's just had been in the water. Hello children. No, she's dust barking, that's not Flo. It's another ellie. Now we're going to squeeze in here and see what we can see. Hello. You're also a bit muddy, which means that there's mud down below us that these ellies are going to be in. Hello. You're going to come and say hello. Hello. Beautiful child. Young lady. Look how muddy you are. I wish I could have caught you in the mud. She's completely covered in mud. There's a tiny little patch on her back. Not the greatest light, because here I am trying to get onto the western side of them and she's moved to the western side of me. Just having a conversation, these two. I can't quite do it. I don't have the stomach for that noise. Bring that kind of... Just tried to intimidate me by walking straight through a borry bush. Not buying it. It's also full of mud. Okay, I'm going to leave these two young ladies to can't go down here. This is an eroded section. It's not very good. Okay. Donna in Florida is asking me about what cats see when they're going after prey. Not really any of the above that you asked, Donna, but what they're seeing is the animal that they're going for. They're seeing a very, very clear picture of the very animal they want to hunt. They have been hunting and feeding on that animal all their lives. They've been, as cubs, they were taken to feed on that animal before while they were being weaned. So they're seeing the individual animal. They've got very good eyesight. There's no reason to think that smell plays some role, but it's not that vital a role. What is she eating? A citrus bush, an entire piece of citrus bush. Eating the roots of it. Little girl. No, it's not a citrus bush. I don't know. They're very well aware of what their prey looks like. One of the reasons why zebra have the stripes that they have is because with all the zebras sticking together in one group, they can't single out an individual. The stripes tend to dazzle them a little bit, and it's imperative that before they even start the hunt and start to expend any energy, they need to single out an individual and go for that individual. You can't swap targets halfway through a hunt. Sometimes they can, because, of course, opportunism is the very thing that dictates survival. And sometimes if the opportunity arises for them to switch prey in the middle of a hunt, maybe they can, but generally speaking they go for an individual, and it's normally an individual that is singled out from the rest of the herd, whether it is zebra or buffalo or impala or giraffe, whatever the case may be. I don't know, I might have done something wrong. I don't know what I did wrong with. I'm getting backsides and not antisocial. They just don't want to talk to me today. Maybe after we sit here for a while. Need to maybe contact the lodge and find out if it is the repeater that's down. There's Ellie's right in front of the lodge. Look at that. We've got staff standing at the lodge looking at the river. Not that they don't look like they're in a hurry to leave the riverbed. But I'm sure that wherever those other two big females were getting their mud bath, I'm sure there are others that are there. Wherever there is. There's a lot of activity down in the riverbed. You might be able to squeeze down there. Have a look at. You want to go down there first to look at these two girls. Yeah, it is. If we can get through this. Here's the big boy. I've named him. I've taken the liberty of naming him Kokwan. Actually, that was my name once. My Shanghai's name. His name was Kokwa. My name was. He's going to come up and say hello, I'm sure. Please. Hello, man. Well, they are moving east, which is encouraging because it means that we're going to get to see them a little bit more to the west, to the east. Becky, I'm going to move over this big termite mound here. We might get a better. I don't know how steep it is. It might be a bit too steep. Yeah, it's a little bit too steep to go down on the other side. Now this isn't great, is it? Too much in between. Am I in the way? Jambo Rafiki. I think we can go down there. Fresh mud on this big marula tree. This giant marula tree. Elephant has just been down on in the mud and has come up from the river and rubbed itself off on this marula tree. Okay, we can't go any further in here, so let's go back. They're actually coming to that crossing that we just came across on their way to that crossing. And then they're going to be moving further west, so we've got a great opportunity if we stay with them for a little while to see them still down in the river. Sorry, young lady. Oh, well, that is good. That is incredible. You see what happens when they go down for a mud bath, and they come up and they find a very fine powdery dust, and then they dust themselves over the mud. And here we've got one having a lovely dust bath after coming up. Unfortunately, we can't get down to the mud bath, so we can't see where they're having fun in the mud. But what we can do... Sorry, Becky, a few thorns. Look at you. You're just covered in mud. I wish we could have seen this. They must be rolling over in the mud. Now, I've parked here because we're going to get this effect of the sun coming through the dust, I hope. Can you throw some sand now, please, madam? Or are you having a nap? Oh, I think she's having a nap. This is how an elephant rests. They don't really sleep, but they nap. You can see the trunk is flat on the ground, the tail goes fairly still, the ears still. It might be a few seconds, it might be a couple of minutes. And maybe she's coming to tell me that I'm talking too loud while she's trying to nap. You're going to go nap somewhere else, are you? Interestingly, all the elephants that I've seen, some of them down there and here, they sort of suddenly get a... Even their bonnets, they move a lot quicker than they normally do. I think they have to be honest. I think something has set them a bit. The vehicle perhaps. Take some fresh mud off that quarry if you want. Rub on this tree, rubbing her elbow, rubbing her tummy, have a scratch will itch, or rather have an itch will scratch. Part of it is just having a good scratch, but also part of it is a combination of the mud that she's got all over her body. Rubbing it off on trees helps with keeping the parasite load down. If there are any ticks or other parasites on her skin, by rubbing the mud, she's not only killing them, she's rubbing them off. Invariably what happens is that the mud cakes around the parasite or the tick or whatever it may be, and then by rubbing it off, she's actually helping to rid herself of any parasites. The mud is cooling her down. It is also acting as a bit of a sunblock. There are multiple reasons why a mud bath is a very, very healthy activity, not only for elephants but for a lot of animals. Even us humans, we pay a fortune for a mud pack. Eating off of bush with the bottom of that jackleberry. And then all of a sudden they get a bit of speed, and she's moving quite fast. It's got nothing to do with my presence. Trying to catch up the rest of the herd. Somehow the herd is moving. Oh, yeah, I'm watching elephants. Watch that. Okay, got to fix the antenna quickly. There I was bragging that we were able to do a game drive without having to fix this. Every 5 minutes, and here I've done it twice in 10. don't think it's Becky's. It's got a white patch in it. It's a little bit too big for a human. I'm not going to see it on camera. It's got a white patch in it. I don't think that could be such a long hair with a tiny little white patch on the end. I'll investigate. Spider web. Something is moving the herd quite fast to the east. They move and then they slow down and stop. Yeah, some of them starting to move up from the river now. Not parallel. Now, if I didn't know who she was, I wouldn't have to. If I had known these elephants for a long time, all I'd have to look at is the configuration of the hair of the tail. I'd be able to identify her just from the configuration or the shape of the hairs on the tail, as opposed to having to look at ears and tusks. Especially when she's one tusk, or she no tusk. Can you repeat that, please? Okay, copied, yeah, but I'll have to let Becky know when I'm planning on staying still for a couple of minutes. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Great stuff. I don't know if we can get through here. Elephants everywhere, of course. Maybe not. Very, very thick. Encounter antenna problem. They're all in pretty thick bush at the moment. But they are moving. Oh. Hello. Coming to say hello. Is this buffalo corn in your way? No doubt. No. Elephant will go forward instead. Okay, now maybe turn up ambient. We've got everybody coming. We're going to be surrounded. Any minute now, we're going to be completely surrounded in elephants. Got this one on the left, we've got two coming up from behind, there's another one coming up from the front right. Doing a good scratch in her ear, just like we do, getting some of the mud out of her ear, splashing mud all over herself. Oh, and green pigeons up there. Where the purple-crested taracas were, there's some green pigeons just above her head. Get all that mud out of your ear. Well, you couldn't throw it in your ear in the first place, girl. think you could get that green pigeon up at the top there in that quarry with it. Oh, never mind, we've got more important fish to fry. Hello, baby girl. We're all going to have to speak to you, because I'm definitely not starting up the thing tonight. That's what you're up to. Although I should, I mean, now there's so much activity behind it. Here's one tusk. Now this one tusk, there's one tusk female behind her. Is she's also one of the old ladies of the herd, this one tusk girl that we've just had throw ahead at her. So, it's body language. Elephant body language. Thanks, Mike. Basically indicating that she's not too happy with us intruding the way we are. I'm not intruding, they're coming to me. But of course, don't argue with an elephant. We're stuck. You get out and push. See, this is where this becomes a fantastic vehicle. Because all we got to do is just slide that knob that way, lock the diff, and pops out. Gail, hello Gail, is in Rhode Island, and I see they're all moving away from the river. I'll go back to the river, see if we have any still down there. We'll come back up to us later. Gail wants to know how much the wind affects animals, the bigger animals. For cows, yes, it is very much the noise of the wind. The wind, and also to some degree it depends on whether you're speaking of predators or prey, because it can be an advantage to predators, but it can also be extremely frustrating or trying to find the word. As far as the prey species are concerned, it makes them very nervous. They can't hear where danger is coming from. When there's wind, there are no ambient sounds as much as there are when there is no wind, as well as perhaps... I'm going to try and find a position. We're in quite thick bush and I'm waiting for them to give me some idea of what they're doing. Some of them have moved up to the north, up that one road we were on now. But some of them are still milling about in this thick bush. And I just want to go and have a look closer down to the river, because I think some of them are still moving along the river to the west. So I'm just going to go through here. The trees make a noise, especially this time of the year. There are leaves falling, there are twigs breaking sometimes in the wind, and all of it makes the animals extremely nervous. Except for, of course, the predators, because the predators can then, they don't have to be as stealthy as they need to be when there is no wind. So the wind can play a very big role in things. I've known elephants also to be very, very nervous, but of course it also depends on what area it is and whether elephants feel comfortable within the area that they're in, whether they feel that there might be a threat of course humans, one of the only threats that elephants have. And in some places that I've been, in other parts of Africa where elephants are under siege, elephants are being preyed on by humans on a very, very large scale for their tusks. Still, even after all this we've been through over the years, it's one of those things that when it's windy, elephants can't tell whether there is a danger or not. Because the bush makes a lot of noise when it's windy. I agree. Okay, get that. Okay, there's still one or two down there in front of the lodge. You can see, move along a little bit, see if we can just get to see some of them in front of the camp. Would be nice. Really beautiful lodge, absolutely stunning. Not really a commercial lodge as such. And there's one of the Ellies, one of the youngsters, right up against one of the rooms. I'd be able to do this if there were guests in the lodge, but something just flew up. I wonder what that was. It's been a long talk. Right type of habit. There's a lovely big pool of water. This is probably where they've been, some of them have been busy. Okay, we're going to stop here and we have to re-angle that camera because it might not be straight. But this is really pretty. Quite a big pool of water here. I didn't know there was such a big pool. Probably what I saw hippo tracks the other day, and it's probably what he came to investigate, knowing this area quite well. He's probably come to see how many pools are remaining after the summer months, so that he knows that if he grazes down here, he can come and spend some time in these pools. Changing mic. A question coming in from Donna about elephant birth and gestation and the like. Donna read that gestation is about 24 months. I thought it was about 22 months. And Donna wanting to know where Dad is during all of this. Well, the elephant bulls don't really play much of a role in the matriarchal society. They come and visit and they mate and they do socialize and they do come and visit their children and spend time with them. I mean, we see this big bull, and I'm sure that young bull by the name of Norman, I'm sure that he might be around as well. These are possibly a couple of young bulls too that are in the process of maybe leaving the herd. But when it comes to the children, they don't have any role to play in the raising of the children. That's all the matriarch's duty, the matriarch and the mother. The matriarch is not necessarily the mother. It could be one of her daughters that could be a mother as well. And there are things that a baby elephant needs to learn for its first 10 years of life, just before it goes into puberty, that don't need the influence of a bull. They don't need the bull's care. They don't need his protection. They don't need any input from him. It's only once the young boys go through puberty that they then need to learn more about being a bull elephant, because up until that age all they've really learnt about is being an elephant. So we're going to take it slow. Elephants are not born with a great amount of inherited instinct, and almost everything about their lives is learned behavior. And so for the first 10 years of their life prior to puberty, it's up to the mothers to teach them. And it's stuff that doesn't have any boys or girls, males or females. It's only once they go through puberty that the young boys need to then leave the herd, because they need to learn how to behave when they become adult bulls, what it is to be an adult bull in elephant society. And of course this is not something that the matriarchs and the mothers, the females, can teach them. They can only learn that from being a bull, or from an older bull. And so they leave the maternal group. Now these little boys, very typically, most of the herd has crossed the river and they're moving away. It's quite possible that they'd even move away as far as a mile or two before these boys follow them and catch up. The communication system that elephants have allows them to communicate verbally over very long distances. So while one might sort of see these two young boys and say, gee, what are these two little boys doing on their own? Not knowing that the rest of the herd is nearby, we seem to judge things the way we see them as humans, and we don't take into account that there's a much bigger picture to look at. And the bigger picture is that this herd of a huge distance, well into a few hundred yards. And right now I'm going to keep quiet for a few minutes. I'm just going to watch this little boy. Pulling apart a creeper. I'm going to see if I can see what creeper it is. I'll keep quiet for a minute. Judging by the leaf of that creeper, it's one of the cucumber family, Cucumis or Cucurbitae, cucumber family. As well as eating the Phragmites reed. These are thick. Hello Linda, I'm guessing it's quite hot Dallas at the moment. Linda wants to know how close the elephants can get to the lodge. Pretty much as close as this bull is, this youngster that we're watching right now. Right behind him, I'm not too sure if you can see it as clear as I can, In fact, right in front of his head right now, to the left of his head, you can see a pole in front of that lovely leadwood tree, and that's carrying a protective fence. Basically, it's a fence that runs around the perimeter of the lodge to stop elephants from going in. And well, it is a very particular thing amongst South African lodges, because we don't have that in other countries that I've lived in. We have the elephants coming right into camp, but it's a safety thing, really. For a lot of lodges here in South Africa, they like to have electric wires around the lodge to stop animals coming in. It keeps people safe, because you can't watch people all the time. And I have to admit, in all the places that I've lived and worked right throughout Africa, I have to be more careful about what my guests are doing and what the animals are doing, because when I've lived in camps, I've managed camps where we have elephant in camp 24 hours a day, resident bulls that practically live in the camp, and it becomes quite tedious, no matter how much you talk to guests and ask them to be careful and ask them not to approach them and ask them not to shove a camera in the elephant's face. It seems to be reverse psychology. As soon as you tell a guest that, they're going to do it. And so I've often had to intervene and step between an elephant and a guest and discourage the elephant from ripping a guest limb from limb. So I think here it's a safety thing. These are child-friendly lodges. You can't have the likes of elephants and some of the other larger animals moving through when you've got kids around. And I suppose to some extent it protects all the trees and the vegetation in the lodge, and it keeps it pristine. I've had times when I've had elephants push trees over guest accommodation. Not intentionally, consequence of eating. But that's about as close as he can get. And if there were any people here, they'd be able to sit. Not so much. That one's quite set back, this room just behind this alley. But there's another room just further to the right, or upstream, that is got a deck jutting up almost right over the riverbank, and there were people sitting on that deck right now. I can also see just the edge of a bathtub in a lovely big plate glass window. I think that would be so amazing, lying in a bathtub like that with having elephants in front of you. I've had that experience. It's not behind plate glass. I used to have a bathtub behind my tent in the Okavango Delta. And when all the guests were out for their afternoon boat rides or for their afternoon activities, it was my time to go back to my accommodation and clean up for dinner. And I used to fill up this little bathtub behind my tent. It was under a beautiful big sausage tree. And it was right on the edge of an island that our camp was on, and I used to be able to lie in the bathtub and have elephants in a mud bath only 20-30 yards away having their mud bath, and that was a common occurrence. There was also a particular elephant bull that used to sleep with his head on the mat in my tent. Synchronize our breathing. Okay, I can't say we. I tried. Elephants take pretty deep breaths sometimes. I don't quite have the lung capacity for that. Interesting. Marilyn asking, why don't we see tick birds on elephants as we do on other animals? Interesting from a point of view that neither of I down here in the south, whether we're talking about tick birds being egrets or tick birds being the oxpeckers. I think largely it's because of an elephant's trunk and the amount of movement and the kind of thing that elephants do. They're big, they brush through trees that would brush birds off of them. They would also swipe at the birds with their trunk if the birds are irritating them. But having said that, up in Tarangire in northern Tanzania, when I lived up in Tarangire National Park, the cattle egret and even the little egret used to ride on elephants' backs, and they used to walk around the elephants catching insects that were that were chased up by the elephants as they moved through the grassland. And very, very seldom, occasionally, once in a while, there was an oxpecker on an elephant, but it was a very rare occurrence. And I think it's got something to do with the fact that their ears are flapping all the time and their trunks are moving, and their trunks are able, between their trunk and their tail, they're able to swat at the birds a lot easier than most other animals. And I think that might have something to do with it. And perhaps the elephants don't tolerate this constant pecking. And I think it's definitely got something to do with the trunk. I mean, I see oxpeckers irritating giraffes or impala or buffalo. They just shake their heads or they shake their bodies, and it doesn't present any danger to the bird, but I imagine that trunk would. That trunk would be quite something to contend with if you're a bird trying to peck an elephant's ear. What's the word I'm looking for? Coping with the handicap are incredible, and I think it says a lot for their character. But I think if you look at some of us humans who have become incapacitated in some way, how some people manage to adapt. You think of perhaps maybe artists who have lost their arms, who paint with their feet. I've seen a gentleman who is able to go fishing with his feet. He can do everything that an able-bodied person can do with a fishing rod. It's hindered him in no way. And I think the most remarkable person of all, and I can't remember his name for the life of me, but there's a young Australian guy who goes to a lot of schools for motivational talks. And when you hear this guy, you can't but get a lump in your throat and a tear in your eye, because he manages to accomplish so much, and he's lost he was born without all four limbs. And he is able to do the most incredible things. And it's all about mindset. It's all about a will to survive. It's all about overcoming obstacles and doing things. There's so many of us humans that are incapacitated in some way or another through an accident, and we suddenly perhaps lose a limb. It's harder to get over the psychological aspect of it, because we put so much into the psychological aspect of it. And when it comes to an animal, yes, there has to be something psychological in losing a certain amount of ability. But nature kicks in and you adapt to survive, because that is what life is all about. Life is all about living and being able to still do the things you need to do, no matter what the handicap is. And I think, if anything, it should be a lesson to some of us who have been through some tough times and maybe changed or had our lives changed for us in inexplicable ways, how to pick up our pieces and carry on, rather than become so withdrawn and only think of the negative of why our lives are suddenly ruined because we can no longer do what we have to do. It's so easy for me to say that because I still have all four limbs. But I would hope that a pair of Malachi kingfishers having an argument. We've just gone around the bend of the river. Such tiny little birds, and from this distance they wouldn't have even been a speck on the screen. But I'll make you jealous by telling you about them.
And
why, because it's too much for the side. Okay, I'm just babbling on. Time to move. See some more Ellies. This little boy is in beautiful light. Actually, we turned a little bit to be able, because I don't have to turn around anyway. Hello, Brent. Oops. Okay. Changing sides now. Actually, Well, no, well, let's get a little bit of him still, because the contrast between him and the greenery in this late afternoon light is quite incredible. He's constantly rumbling, and I'm imagining that the rumbling that he is doing right now. Are we still on that mic? Are you going to stay there? No? Okay. Brent. See, I interrupted myself and now I lost my train of thought. But Brent was asking whether people in Africa use elephants in the way that they're used in India and the Far East, Thailand, I suppose. Answer there, generally no. African elephants are not able to spend that amount of time doing work. They need to feed all the time. But having said that, there are a lot of, an increasing number, not so many, because there's a control over it and a lot of controversy over it. There are a number of elephant-back safari operators that have taken orphaned elephants and have reared them in human captivity, and they now use them to do elephant-back safaris. And, well, there's an entire discussion we could have for days on end, okay, maybe not days, for hours on end, whether or not this is justifiable or the merits and demerits thereof. Elephants that would otherwise be put down, or I don't even want to go there, it's just controversial. In my 20s, when I was a youngster, I know I'm still a youngster, but when I was younger, my 20s was long ago, I used to think that the best way to view wildlife, and this was before there were any elephant-back safaris, I used to think the best way to go through the bush would be to befriend an elephant bull and be able to ride on his back if he let me. But it never really occurred to me to put big saddles on them and put people on their backs. And I know they've been doing it in India for a long time, and in fact when it first started here in Africa, they were bringing mahouts from India to come and help train elephants here. But the biggest controversy is the methods that are used, negative versus positive reinforcement. And, well, there's absolutely no question that negative should never be used. Becky, you can see a couple more still in the reeds up ahead, and that's close to the crossing. I want to go there. He's got his head in a tree anyway. So let's move down river again and see some more of this herd. Leave this youngster to his own devices. I also want to see if we can find Kokwan again, the old bull, and maybe chat to him. And then also Flo, the matriarch, to officially introduce her, because she is the original matriarch of this herd. We want to find a lovely female. Her name is Kombela. Kombela means to ask, and when you, it's also a way of saying please. So please may I, or way of asking in the local language, Shanghai. Very interesting story why she's called Kombela. But it's a story that I'm going to save for the moment that she's got our attention. The moment when she's right next to us and I can chat to you about her while she's in the, it's not going to have the same impact or meaning if I tell you the story now and then later on I'll tell you. So I'm going to keep you in suspense. I'm not going to tell you a thing. Not a thing. Just yet. About Kombela. Here we have a female cow, a lady elephant. Oh gee, they still spread out. Some of them have moved up into the woodland. I've heard some trees breaking up away from the river, but there are still a few here. This is a young female. pretty girl. This is a perfect example of, I've given her a lot of space. Hello, baby girl. Hello. Gave her more than enough space to do anything she wanted, go anywhere she wanted to go, and she chose to come straight to us first before moving on. So you see, it's not easy to approach elephant. One doesn't really want to. Oh, excuse me a sec. Was that Debbie? Oh, thanks. Sorry. To interrupt that thought. Where was I? Yes. In terms of personal space and how it is with elephants, is one can't drive up to elephants. I can't drive up to them and expect them to stay where they are next to the vehicle. But as you can see, it's all very well to stop the vehicle and give them the opportunity to come towards us. And that is almost what happened there. Trunks up. There we go. Some of them are coming back to the river from up in the woodland. The little bee eaters catching insects in this late afternoon light. Really beautiful light now. We could leave the elephants and go and look for something else, but I'm afraid that our chances, well, yes. We never know what our chances are. But for the time being, we could easily go somewhere else and drive around for the next hour. But I think with this light the way it is, and with this big herd of elephants the way they are, there's a buffalo. It's the weirdest. I've had the weirdest thing. I was looking at that buffalo and I thought, but we don't have any young elephants in this herd as small as that. Hello, baby. This is one tusk. Hello, Mrs. One Tusk. And this buffalo appeared, and I thought, see, there are no elephants here with a tusk so strangely deformed like that.
She looks at that. She's just heard the buffalo. Look at this. Now she can see that it's a buffalo. But she heard this buffalo and she could tell that it wasn't an elephant moving through the grass. So she immediately became very well aware of another animal being there. The ears went straight out to listen better. She's actually going to chase it, maybe. No? Too young to do that. Throwing her head at the buffalo. Telling the buffalo she doesn't like it. Buffalo's wandering on. I don't think you could. Did you even get it on cam?
The buffalo?
Yeah.
Hardly.
Yeah, no, it was just out of sight. She's going to follow it now. All big and brave because the buffalo's moving away. Surrounded by elephants again. All sides. There's an old tuskless female behind us. Right behind us. Hello, old girl. I can't move. You're going to have to go through the bushes. I can't really move. Do you want to come here next to me? Oh, I'm getting tied up in my own earphone. Hello, baby. We're on this one. No touch. One touch. Two touch. In my element. My element. As I used to say, in my elephant. This, I think, is Combela. I need to get a photograph of it to confirm it. It's not as, no, it's one tusk, sorry, this is one tusk. They're all rushing back down into the riverbed now. I expect that buffalo is long gone. Okay, we're going to move on. Just down, just past this acacia that is not allotica. It's a sweet thorn acacia that plays havoc with our antenna. At least going in this direction I can deal with it better. There's tuskless girl. Same trick doesn't work going back the other way. Buffalo history. Buffalo's gone. I think there was a question I didn't get to. Can smell elephant flatulence. And now, can't remember the question. Also a little raptor sitting in that dead tree up there. I'm hoping something's going to be chased out of the reeds by the elephants, being a predator. Raptor, by the way, R-A-P-T-O-R, raptor, is any bird of prey. It's the same root, the word rapacious. In other words, that ilk. They're at the crossing that we normally cross, where we crossed earlier. I'm going to let us just roll forward down this little slope. Maybe no tusk is going down to the water. Here's one tusk on our left. I don't really like the vehicles moving without the engine because it makes a strange noise.
very square forehead of hers, very distinct. The main difference, one of the main morphic differences between bulls and cows is the very, very square forehead of a cow. I think Deborah was asking about the sizes, the difference in size between Asian and African elephants. There's virtually no comparison. Asian elephants are tiny in comparison to our African elephants. They're not that closely related. The Asian elephants are a different genus entirely.
Related only in that they are both proboscids. What is that one doing? Digging. Like something on the ground. Of course, the other thing between the Asian and the African elephant is that the females don't have tusks in the Asian elephant. Orange beak, dark eye. Lizard buzzard. No, it's the bar. Maybe. To the bar. Yeah. Lizard buzzard. You know what's quite amazing is that I've stood in that exact same spot in that water that she's standing now, waiting my feet too. I had to pull a Land Cruiser out of this crossing the other day with this little Land Rover. In case you didn't hear that, I'll say that again. I had to pull a Land Cruiser, brand new long wheelbase Land Cruiser, out of this crossing the other day with this short wheelbase Land Rover. Hello elephants rumbling. Just in case you didn't hear that. Rub it in, rub it in. So just in case you didn't... Alright, it's enough. I'd like to move forward a little. I'd like to try and get that lizard buzzer just as sort of a side.
On the side. If we can. Sitting a little bit higher. But for the benefit of our bird is out there, and the fact that we haven't really had many raptors, and just a lovely, well, it's hiding behind a branch, grass and grass, zebra and zebra. If that elephant rubs against the tree, then the lizard buzzard is going to fly away. So there's an elephant climbing the bank now, going straight towards that dead tree where the lizard buzzard is sitting. We can keep that, I think, because I'm going to stop here now. Can you
see the lizard buzzard?
Yeah.
There's one very distinguishing feature about a lizard buzzard, and I hope it can come through on your screen, and that it has a very distinctive white stripe down its throat. Vertical. Not white. Sorry, black. Why am I saying white? Vertical black stripe down the throat. Sitting a little bit in the shade. It would be nice if it would sit in the sun.
We're not going to get it at camera angle.
No.
I can't pan up.
Okay. Can't get it. Beak is in the sun, but the rest of it's sitting in the shade. Shaded by a branch and a branch. Nice pose. Her ears touch the tree, and her butt, yeah, it's going to rub on the tree. And there it goes. This lizard buzzard is now being shaken up a bit up in the branches. And just to emphasize the point, another elephant on the left. Good place to have a rub after a mud bath. Lizard buzzard is still up there. Not for long, I don't think. Okay. Not a very long rub. Okay, we need to go and watch her. She's digging and throwing sand and mud everywhere. Okay. We got the last of that rubbing. Got some geese. I wonder, they might be flying from Albedo Fan because the leopard is there. Can I move now?
Yeah.
Hello, grasshopper. Bye-bye, grasshopper. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Now, despite the fact that there is a fair amount of standing water here, the elephants are not likely to drink from the standing water. They're going to do exactly what this old girl is doing. She's digging a hole in the sand, because what happens is that the water is filtered through the sand and it's cool, and it's algae free, so it's a lot better for her to drink from a little. Is that good? A lot better for her to drink because they're fussy. They love clean water. She's digging a hole in the sand, and she's gonna. At first, I've seen elephants have different methods of dealing with the sand that they get in their trunk. Some of them, they hold their trunk down for a while so the sand all falls to the bottom, and then they swing their trunk around like a whirlwheel, like a windmill, to get rid of all the sand. And then once they reach water, and obviously with the surface water it tells us that the water table is still quite high, so she doesn't have to dig very deep, but she's opened up a fairly decent hole, and the water that is seeping into that hole is going to be probably good enough for us humans to drink. A little bit of sand. Question from M. Martius. Haven't heard that name before, but asking whether elephants avoid defecating or fouling their water source. The answer really is no, because they tend to divide their water sources up. When they have clean water, they're likely to use the clean water for drinking first and then maybe bathing afterwards, but they're also likely to have other water sources that they'll use for swimming and playing, and then at times when they are swimming and playing that they do defecate and urinate in the water, because they're not likely to be drinking it. And it's when they have places like this that they can come to get clean water that it doesn't make much difference, because the mud and the splashing that they do when they're cooling down and playing is not necessarily drinking water or time for drinking. It's more for cooling down and fun. So here we have two of the old girls of this herd, this family group or breeding herd. And this goes to show the variety of configurations of tusks that one gets here in Africa. Here on the left is this one tusk old female, and then to the right is no tusk or tuskless female. It's very difficult to answer a question of whether they lost the tusk or whether they still have it or whether it broke off, because one would have to look. It's her turn now. Clearly a hierarchical thing. She prefers this water hole. She had another hole that was dug, but she's been waiting for this old girl to move on, and now coming to this water hole. The true definition of a water hole, a hole in the sand. But one would have to find the skull after, post-mortem, once they passed away, to see whether they in fact ever had tusks. The thing is that the tusk is the incisor. It's not a canine tooth. It's the two tusks are the incisor teeth, and some elephants, they just don't grow, they just don't develop, they don't protrude beyond the jaw. They're very, very small, they're still there, but they just don't grow because they have that end of the genetic pool, or that gene spectrum, they're right at the end of it, that the tusks don't develop, but they still have their incisors. They're just very, very tiny little incisors. I'm looking at her lip, her upper lip, where it would normally, if she had had tusks before, her upper lip would have been stretched and it would have still perhaps shown the shape of tusks that might have been there. So I'm pretty sure that what she is, she's just carrying the gene for tusklessness, which in essence just means that the tusks didn't grow out through the jaw and protrude beyond the upper lip. She has a bit of a scruffy tail too. Hello Bev in Australia. Bev says the country looks dry, wanting to know when the rainy season is. Actually, Bev is not dry at the moment. It's still remarkably green. We've just come out of our wet season. We have a summer rainfall here, and it's been not only great rainfall this past summer, but the few summers prior to this. In fact, the last couple of years have been really good summers. So the bush is looking remarkably green for this time of year. We're in June. It should be a lot drier right now, as well as a lot more open and a lot less grasses. I don't think I've seen it as good as this in 30 years, really. But we're going into the dry season now, and it's drying up rapidly. Some of the trees are losing their leaves daily, to the point where very soon we're going to be seeing bare trees and dry grasses. And then with the movement of some of these larger mammals like elephant and buffalo, and we'll see these grasses being flattened and the bush opening up considerably to be able to see more wildlife. But not only that, is that as it does dry up, we're going to see a lot more wildlife coming down to these pools down here on the Timbavati River. There are animals that will also utilize these holes that the elephants drink from and create. I've known lion to keep them open. I've seen lion digging at them to keep the fresh water there. I've seen baboon sticking their heads down there and drinking. I've seen hyena digging them out and lying in those pools that the elephants create. Because in a couple of weeks' time, I would imagine that there isn't going to be any surface water anymore. And it's dropping rapidly. And very soon, the only water there will be subsurface, just under the surface of the sand. It still makes its inexorable trek downstream, the water filtering through all the sand, flowing under the sand. But it will only be places where the elephants dig that will allow access. Of course, there are some places where there are deep pools that might remain deep for longer. Well, it would appear that these matriarchs have decided to cross the river and head south again. After some of them were starting to move north, they are now aiming directly for our camp, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to go to bed tonight with the sound of elephants feeding. Yes. Getting tired of. Hello, Tora. Tora's being observant. What is that little yellow flower? We'll get that little flower. I haven't had a flower spray for the ladies. I'm not sure what that is. I know it's not easy, and it's a tiny flower. I can maybe get the back end of the vehicle closer to it if you want. Back of it. Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to take a photograph, and then I'm going to answer Tora's question. But I just need a photograph. I want to photograph the flowers as I see them. Funny. It looks familiar, but I can't remember its name, or I don't know its name. Okay. Scratched myself. Blood everywhere. Hello, babblers. Aramark babblers next to us. Doing what babblers do best. They babble. Okay, back to the elephants. That might be an obscure little flower to find. So, what I'm going to do, quickly, before we come back to the Ellies, I'm going to go to Alveda Pan, where I left those leopard tracks this morning. Oops. There's Ellies across the river, they're heading up towards our camp. And before it gets dark, the sun's going down now, and we're sadly not in a place to see it. I'll owe you a sunset again. Especially with elephants. I know I'm supposed to get an elephant sunset. Most of these, most of the females, most of the older females have moved across the river. All the youngsters are going to have to come across with whatever bulls are in attendance. But the temperature's dropping now. As the sun gone down, temperature down here in the river is dropping rapidly. So the question was, from Torah, observing this delicate finger-like protrusions that the elephants have, the tip of the trunk. And Andy or Torah can correct me if I'm wrong, but the question was, do they use that for feeding, I think. Just as a byline, the one other main difference between the African and the Asian elephant is the fact that the Asian elephant only has one of those little protuberances on the tip of its trunk, as opposed to the opposing ones of the elephant in Africa, which almost act as a forefinger and a trunk, or rather a forefinger and a thumb, and they can pick up a peanut on the ground. I mean, they can pick up the most smallest of things. Very delicate operation. Those little, we call them fingers, of course they're not, because they're at the end of the nose. But it's a remarkable adaptation, could I even use the word evolutionary adaptation? No, just an adaptation. Being able to feed. Picking up a single leaf, taking a tiny twig off of a branch. Extremely dexterous with those fingertips. Primates, yeah. The cats, on the other hand, whose tracks I had this morning, went into the riverbed. Oh, you mean like, oh, okay. Andy's saying maybe more along the trunk, those sort of ribbed, that sort of ribbed appearance, maybe that. That is incredibly unusual. Oh, they stopped. Oh, did you see that, Becky?
Yeah.
2 fish eagles lying on the ground, but lying down. Maybe we disturbed something we shouldn't. Beautiful call of theirs. Can't do it. Not a fish eagle. Okay.
Yeah.
Very strange. Never seen that before. Maybe they were talon locked on the ground, having a bit of an altercation. Maybe something else. All those ribs and ridges and texture that you see on the trunk, the full length of the trunk, give an indication of the amount of muscles that the trunk holds, that a trunk has. There's speculation as to the exact number. Some people say 40,000, some people say 400,000 muscles. But let's just put it this way. An elephant's trunk has hundreds, if not thousands, hundreds of muscle groups in its trunk. And those muscle groups all are made up of many, many muscles. So it's hard to really establish a figure of how many muscles exactly exist in a trunk. I don't know, maybe somebody's counted them somewhere along the line. in dissection. I must have a look at my one program I have on my computer where they dissected an elephant and refresh my memory a little bit about these things. But what you're seeing is merely the external of all those internal muscle groups. We're going to go and do a loop through here and eventually come back on the other side of the river and head more or less, I guess, up towards camp where the elephants are heading. I know I'm going to sleep well tonight, and I'm going to relish the idea of lying in bed and listening to elephants feed outside my room. There's moments like that that I feel like I'm one of the, if not the, safest human on the planet. The only thing I'm scared of is other humans. And if I've got an elephant feeding outside my room, I know that no humans are coming to get me. We humans don't exactly leave a very good reputation wherever we go, whatever we do. Most of us are good. Most of us have good intentions. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing whether it's the opposite. And I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Is it the Maritimes or Maritimes? The Maritimes in Canada. Because Gigi's referring to a time a long time ago when I once said that I could smell cats. I'm wondering if I still have that ability. I do indeed still have that ability. I can wake up at night and smell a cat outside my house. Wake up in the morning and find the leopard tracks there. But there's also their scent markings. It's very easy to smell leopard scent markings. They do have a particular scent about them. At the moment my nose is full of elephant. I've only got half a nose. My right nostril has been inactive for some time now. I have to go to the city. T&E. Turbinate is playing up. Median turbinate. Semantics. What that is. But even with my half sense of smell, I'm still smelling pretty good. Louisville, Kentucky. Now Marsha is in Louisville, Kentucky. Marsha, would that maybe be, perchance, home of the Louisville Slugger? Marsha's asking if I've ever seen an elephant sleeping on the ground on its side for any length of time. Yes, I have. Well, I guess nice piece of wood to carve a snake out of. Obviously, one sees youngsters, babies, sleeping for periods on the ground on their side. But there's certain circumstances where adults will do so too, and I've been in places where I've had elephant bulls sleeping on their side. Places where they're able to make a little hollow for their body, or places where they're able to lie against the slope of a termite mound. But mostly they can't really lie flat. It's not very comfortable or easy for them. Well, this water's all but gone. It used to be a very deep pool, and it's now no longer. I've come this way because there were some leopards that came this way this morning, and I was hoping that maybe we could find something of their presence or their passing through, not passing on, but passing through. We started here this morning because I heard the baboons barking. Good bourbon from Kentucky. Good debate whether it's better than a Tennessee whiskey. Personally preferable to a blended Scotch. Big snake track. Oh, snakes were moving today. But it seems there was also a human here, and if there were leopards here and a human was walking by, either the human was eaten by the leopard or the leopards ran away. Or hid away, they were hiding. Back to a place where we saw the same herd of elephant a few days ago, if not about a week ago. And somebody was asking, I can't remember who it was a question that came in afterwards, or that I found, asking whether these piles of sticks that we're possibly going to see were left by the elephant. The answer is no. Humans gathering firewood. Basically clearing a certain patch on either side of this road for the length of this road to act as a fire break, and assisting local communities outside the reserve to obtain firewood. A lot of the rural areas out here don't have electricity. And cooking and warmth, especially now in the dry season, going into the winter months, and the evenings get cold. Warmth is by fire. I live like this. I don't have electricity at home, but I don't use much wood. I don't like burning wood too much. And I use kind of a propane gas for cooking. Candles for lighting. Although I started using LEDs now, and they're very efficient. Wonderful invention, the LED, because I can run it off a little 12-volt system. And one of these days when I grow up, I'll get myself a solar panel that will make things even easier. And maybe one of these days solar lighting, solar power will become more accessible for those of us living in Africa, in rural areas, remote places. More affordable, accessible, more I don't know, just more, better, easier to obtain. Ironic that the people that can afford good solar powered systems for their houses are the people who can also afford to run electricity or big generators. somehow. Africa has so much sun. We are blessed with probably 300 days of sun a year in some parts of Africa. Like here, for example, this entire dry season. We might have a bit of cloud in the morning like we did today. It was misty and cloudy, which is rather unusual considering I suppose we're getting close to new moon. That could be what it is, getting relatively close to new moon. But most of the days are filled with sunshine. And it would make sense for solar power to be the thing for Africa, where you can't get any other form of energy. There's a lovely big nyala bull in this dip. There's another one running through the back, so he's going to follow him. Yeah, go after your brother. It's not impossible that I've missed where these leopards may have crossed the river and come onto this side of the river, maybe crossed this road. There are certain patches of this road where it's impossible to see tracks, but I'm pretty sure they might still be in there somewhere, but there's no sign of them on this side of the river. Eagles are still doing their thing. And I'm not smelling any cats. So, maybe not. Okay, so smell the pachyderms. Where are they? interesting though. I've just realized, and I think we're going to have to investigate a little bit more tomorrow morning, is that the baboon that normally roosts in those big trees when we came across the river, they aren't there. There's only one reason why baboons won't go back to their regular roost, and they'll have to go to another temporary roost, sleeping spot for their overnight. Only reason is because there are leopards around their sleeping trees. That told me to turn around or something. No, I can't really do that. But guinea fowl starting to complain. Getting a bit dark now already. I just want to go back to where the fish eagles were, to the pan. Guinea fowls are complaining there now. Fortunately, we're losing light fast. Andy, can you hear any elephants around there? And they were coming up from the river straight towards camp, somewhere in the bushes below camp. Okay, copy. Stop and listen quickly. Something we'll have to morning, because not going to do us any good going into a forest in this light. But there's a good chance that the leopards were here somewhere. We just couldn't find them today. Well, not a good chance. I know that they're somewhere here. Okay, well, guess it's nearly home time. Nearly time to call it a day. pick up on the hunt tomorrow morning at 6:30 Central African time. That's Greenwich Mean Time plus 2 hours ahead of Greenwich. Meantime, here we are. Heading around, we're about 5:30 now, I guess, judging by the lights. 1730 hours. Army time. Becky's been bringing you the images from behind the camera, pointing it in the right direction. Andy's been sending the questions through to me. And my name is Mark. And this has been Thornybush Private Nature Reserve, in a little corner of South Africa near the Kruger National Park. And you've been watching Wild Earth. And we hope we'll see you again soon. We're going to say goodbye as we look up the Thornybush River into dusk. So don't get stuck in the mud. There's sand. Is that a bit better, Beck? Rebecca? Not too much color. But bye-bye from all of us, and thank you for participating, thank you for the questions, and thank you just for being you, our viewers.